following podcast is recorded and produced by the Podcast Precinct in affiliation with the network at bicbp-radio.com. The Podcast Precinct. Consistency, creativity, culture.
And fake violence in the wrestling ring led to this real-life brutality.
I think this is fake.
You think it's fake? What's that? Is that fake? Huh? What the hell's wrong with you? That's open hand slap, huh? You think it's fake? You come like that in the face? Easy. Huh? What do you mean? Fake.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Retroactive Sports Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Andrew Lenz, and joining me always is Johnny Jammin' Townsend. I like that.
Johnny the Crusher Townsend. We're doing a pro wrestling episode today, and in my heyday of backyard wrestling, I was Johnny the Crusher Townsend, and the only one in our league who could literally pick anybody up. So I had the best moves.
Well, Marco stunned over here.
You'll never guess what my favorite move to do was the spine buster. That's right. Arn Anderson before me.
I did one backyard wrestling other than a buried alive match with my brother during a snowstorm, but I was known as Coho, and I got it off of a hockey stick for my name.
Coho.
Yep.
K-O-H-O. Love it.
I did one match, and I won by tap out because I was going to rip the guy's favorite shirt.
I was such a Mick Foley mark that I'm pretty sure I can count, because we did probably 15 matches overall. We recorded all of them. I think I might have won once because I thought it was way more better because I would have storylines in my head of how our Fed was supposed to go. And I thought it was like, well, I want this person to win, so I'm going to put him over.
Ooh, not a Hulk Hogan guy.
No, I took pride in it. That's the Mick Foley in me.
You know,
gotta make the others look better.
You know who we have with us, though?
Oh, yeah, that's right. This is a very special episode. Just Andrew and I is not enough.
No. We brought in an expert here for this episode.
That's right.
One half of the, I always want to call him the Peacock Express, but that's probably because my Jim Cornette that is going. The Peacock Experience, Mr. Will Calrissian.
Well, hello. Pleasure to be here. And it's funny you say Peacock Express because we actually were originally the Peacock Express. And then I saw that wonderful album cover with Jimi Hendrix and those two fro-having white fellows. And I said, you know what? It's an experience. We are going to change it over to the Peacock Experience. Everybody's Express. And I don't like trains. I hate trains. I've never been on a train. And I don't like going places overly fast, but I wanted to give people an experience. And that's why we changed over to the Peacock Experience. Pleasure to be here.
If you're going fast, you can't really experience very much, can you?
You can't, except for Whiplash.
Yeah.
As long as it's not the Chris Colton experience, I'm 100% fine with it.
No, yeah, it was a good experience. I would have been like to have been there as a fly on the wall. I don't want to experience the whole thing, but like here and there, like I wouldn't want to be there for his later days. Nothing against that. You do what you want to do, but that's not my cup of tea, if you will, per se.
Yeah. Now, Will, you are, of course, how long have you been in professional wrestling? Let's start there.
Professional. Well, I my first professional match in quotation marks was 2001. But as you did, I did backyard wrestling for many, many moons before that. So I think I started the wrestling bug in 1997.
Ooh, okay. All right. Who trained you, as the kids ask?
Yeah.
Who trained me? Who first trained me, or who trained me properly?
Properly.
Properly.
I always
properly training.
You are not the first professional wrestler I've heard say that. Who trained me or who trained me properly?
Yeah. So when I first started training, it was these two guys that worked at Tops in the deli, and I was a teenager at the time.
Was it the Ram? Was it the Ram?
It was Randy the Ram. Yes.
It
was Mickey Rourke before he hit his claim to fame. He was really doing some deep undercover, character work for his upcoming role.
Did they have you punching like the meat hanging from the freezer?
No, they just exposed me to this really racist guy who ran the freezer, and he just drank a lot. That's all he did. And then he kept telling me I was busted, and I'm like, I haven't lost my virginity yet. I'm not busted. But then he just called everybody busted. But no, they trained me, and I was still actively in high school when I was training. I was fortunate enough to look older than I did. Like in New York State, you can't start training for wrestling until you're 18, and I was 16. But I had mutton chops and a beard and chest and back hair, so I was good to go. But they trained me for a while, and then we realized they trained me completely wrong. Like they trained me Mexican style, which is work the right, everything on the right, which is complete opposite for what you're supposed to do, which is work the left. But did that, and then I hooked up with a group, a triad of guys called the All Nighters: Joey Knight, Robin Nightwing, and Kevin Grace. And they were also good friends with Beth Phoenix. So between the four of them is where I got the bulk of my training from.
Oh man, Kevin Grace and a Nightwing.
Yeah.
So, man, something's there. DC Comics are calling to me. Well, the reason that we wanted to have Will on today is, Andrew, what's our topic for today?
We're talking about, I believe it was called one of the slaps heard around the world, or the slap heard around the world, the Dr. D. David Schultz and John Stossel incident, where John Stossel was doing an expose for 2020, and it was exposing the business, because this is, I want to say,
early 80s.
Yeah. And that's when WWF was hitting off. Vince was buying up all the territories.
Hogan was just sort of starting to become a big thing.
Yep. And Eddie Mansfield felt like he wasn't getting the things that he deserved, even though he tried to say this was for the better of the business, why he exposed things. So John Stossel made the mistake, I guess you could say, of going up to Dr. D. David Schultz. And if you don't know who Dr. D. David Schultz is, picture a real life Stone Cold Steve Austin. Not saying Stone Cold isn't pretty badass, but Dr. D is a legitimate 100% badass. And he said, hey, or he pretty much said, you're a fake. And Dr. D slapped the shit out of him.
Twice.
Yes.
Yeah. Each side of the face.
Yeah. Well, Dr. D said, if you hit somebody and the man gets back up, you better knock him down again, because he might do something to you. That's what he was taught. But Dr. D.
And he was basically told before that, make sure whatever you do, don't expose the business and be in character. So,
well, that's always, from what I understand, has always been like the code since back then.
Yeah. Well, now you've come up in wrestling in a different era. I mean, after the 2000, when I think most people are, quote unquote, I hate saying this word, but smartened up to stuff. Do you still feel that need to sort of keep some stuff, kayfabe for the boys? Or because I'll tell you this, as a wrestling nerd myself, I love being worked.
I do too.
I honestly feel well, first off, like I'm surprised that Vince wasn't a fan of the business being exposed, as he enjoys exposing himself quite
all the
often.
time. Yeah.
But so that's kind of
waiting for his time to do it later on.
Yeah. Maybe you're just getting ready for that. Who knows? But I feel like I was at a weird point, because I came up like the rise of the internet, and I came in at a time where there still was some kayfabe, but it was being chipped away at month by month, year by year. So, and a lot of the people that I encountered or that I trained with or wrestled with, they were still of the old mindset of, you got to keep kayfabe, you got to stay in character. You can't, get rid of the illusion that this is quote unquote real. But people were starting to get in the know due to, I feel like, the internet and just the changing of the business. And it was kind of a weird time. It was kind of exciting learning that stuff firsthand through wrestling shows and being in the business and being around other wrestlers, like learning the talk and the terms and what this means and what that means and this, that, the other thing. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting time, I would say. But as a whole, I feel that there's certain things that I'm not like against the breaking of kayfabe because I feel like it's already been exposed, but I'll go out of my way to try to work people in certain aspects. And I feel like it's either one of two ways. Either people love the fact that they're being worked or they're fucking furious that you work them. There's no happy medium.
Well, you know us, we're both very happy to be worked.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it. I would love to sit there and read like dirt sheets and stuff like that. But what is the point of it? It's telling you, it's like telling you the future. It's kind of like,
spoilers.
Yeah. It's like having the almanac from Back to the Future.
I mean, let's be honest.
You know who's going to win? I mean, other than for betting purposes, I
mean, let's be honest. Which is more cool? Which would be a more awesome experience? Would it be knowing ahead of time that Scott Hall is going to show up on Nitro, or is it being totally surprised that out of nowhere Scott Hall shows up on Nitro?
And I feel like even recent times, like you look at CM Punk coming back for WWE, like that wasn't spoiled, and that people loved it. Like it was a huge reaction. So I feel that they're higher up in the big time. They're trying to keep it so they can still try to work the crowd.
Yeah.
I think Triple H has something to do with that though, too.
Agreed. Yeah, I could see that.
He wants to keep it. But when it comes to, say, this situation at this time period or of anything, I mean,
so Schultz is doing this. This is like right before the first WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It's basically when this happens.
Yeah.
I totally feel like Schultz was in the right. Like, yeah.
He was doing what he was told.
Exactly. He was totally in the right. The thing that blows my mind about this whole situation is, yes, it was at a pivotal time in the progression of pro wrestling. And Schultz has been blacklisted from the industry because of this incident. But Hogan, which I find right before WrestleMania 1, did something far more egregious.
Yeah, it was literally just
biggest name in the fucking business.
Well, because he's the money.
Yeah, he's the golden child.
I feel like Schultz could have been the money, but they blacklisted him so early because of this.
Yeah, but if you watch Dark Side of the Ring, Cornette says, and I've not, like, I don't really remember big Dr. David Schultz because Dr. D here, because like you said, he was out of the business by this point, 85, 89. And at this point, if you weren't on WWF, I didn't know who the hell you were. So, but
especially like we're from the Northeast during that time. So yeah, if you're in the Northeast, if you're not in WWF at the time, then you don't know anyone else really, because we're not getting any NWA coverage. No, Mid-Atlantic, none of that stuff.
I mean, even when he slaps the reporter and he goes, and then Vince is like, "Hey, we'll send you to Japan and we'll let this cool off." He goes, "All right." So he sends him to Japan, and of course, Japan's like, "Hey, it'll be pretty fun."
Well, he went to Inoki, and Inoki was friends with Vince.
And he goes, "Let's recreate that, right? And we're going to have a reporter come in, and you're going to quote unquote smack him, and then we're going to take pictures of him laying on the floor, and you standing above him." So that's what they do.
I just think about how different WrestleMania 1 would have probably been if they would have just been like, "Cool, Dr. D, you'll stay, we'll stick up for you." Is that is it still Piper and Orndorff in a way with Bob Orton, or is it Dr. D, Piper, and Orndorff kind of doing their thing? Because Dr. D seems like, and I do believe there was a rivalry between him and Hogan and AWA, and that's why Hogan kind of brought him over, because him and Hogan were friends. But I mean, I'd love to see what that would have became. I mean, if Piper and Hogan became that big, I mean, Dr. D, if you just watch his promos, I was watching his promos. This guy can talk. This is I talked about,
you believed what he was saying.
I talked about Stone Cold in the beginning, but this guy was the original Stone Cold Steve Austin. The way that he carried himself, the way that he looked, the way that he talked, and everything else.
Where literally after he gets kicked out of wrestling, he becomes a bounty hunter, like a legit bounty hunter.
Yes.
So,
He's kicking down doors. He talks about the two girls he saved in Puerto Rico. And
now we don't know what, I think Will could probably attest to this. Wrestlers are well known to really embellish stories. So we don't know exactly
what? No,
the truth there,
everything that a wrestler says, you could take word for word, verbatim, the truth. We never embellish. We never exaggerate. I got to think it would have been Piper and Dr. D. And could you imagine the heat that they would have generated? If you still do the Cyndi Lauper thing, they're just beating up members of the media.
Yeah, just smacking different ones left and right.
And then that would make a reason why to bring in Mr. T.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he didn't like Mr. He started crap with Mr. Him and Mr. T did not get along because of the old rules.
Yeah.
Who are you to be stepping into my locker room?
Which is still kind of happening today. I mean, literally, as of this recording, Kevin Nash was like very annoyed with that Logan guy and said some stuff. So it still kind of goes on today, really.
You hate him that much, you won't even acknowledge his full name?
I can't remember if it was Jake or Paul because there's two of them, I think.
Well, it's Jake Paul and Logan Paul.
Oh, there you go. See? I get them all confused.
Jake Paul's going after Mike Tyson. Logan Paul just goes after CoffeeZilla.
And Chris Paul does Allstate. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But not his other brother, Chris Paul.
Yeah. So still kind of goes on.
Yeah, but in a way, I'm never a professional wrestler, but what from I understand back then and looking at the history, I mean, these guys got their ass kicked before they even got into the business. I mean, just look at some of these people. I was listening to Dr. Dion Cornette, and he was talking about his trainer, Herb Welch, where there was nights where he would come home and his wife would have to pull him out of the car from training, like literally help him out. And some of these guys that trained you, they were saying that they would keep you, like if they owned a farm, they would keep you on the farm during the day and you would work on the farm. And then at night, they'd throw you into a barn and then you'd start getting your training there. And it wasn't teaching you how to work in the beginning. It was stiff.
It was basically seeing if you were tough enough to handle it.
Yeah. Like, what was it? Eddie Graham used to literally tell guys to break, the people that come in and be like, hey, I want to be a professional wrestler. And Eddie Graham be like, break his ankle. Let's see if he comes back the next day on a broken ankle. So I get where Dr. D is coming from now and what the older guys will do as a fan of the history of things. I know a lot of people don't think pro wrestling as a sport, but I find the history very fascinating. So I kind of put it in that sports category in a way. But I feel that, I think he had a right to be pissed at Mr. T also.
I mean, I get it. I think anybody at any job, I don't care what the job is, let's say you're working somewhere and then they just hire somebody who's never been there before, and maybe they get there and they're like, you find out they're getting paid way more than you, even though you have way more experience. Like that will rub you the wrong way.
I feel a lot of things too with kayfabe is like you can't really compare the way that the newer wrestlers view it versus the old way, because like they trained back then, they trained them that hard because they didn't want to expose the business right away and say, hey, this is work. Like, no, this is legit. This is what you have to be this tough. And you want to make sure that only the toughest guys were there, because if they do get challenged out in public,
yeah, which would happen.
They have to hold their own. If they don't hold their own, they get kicked. They get their ass kicked by Joe Schmo down the street. Then they expose the whole business.
And Joe Schmo don't even know he's on a reality show.
He doesn't know. Joe Schmo don't know. But like now, like when you get in and immediately that it's a work, and when it as I went to wrestling training, you'd get these new guys that would come in, and I feel like a lot of people came in that weren't of athletic prowess. They're like, oh, wrestling is fake, so I can do this. It's just a performance. But they had no athletic background, no athletic toughness. And we had a lot of people that would come in and we would just run them to death with drills to see if they could, keep up stamina wise, keep up with the physicality, and just be mentally tough enough to keep going. And that was kind of like the new way of like weaning people out, is just trying to work them out to death to see if they could make it, rather than physically beating the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Come on.
Which would still happen from time to time. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if someone came in who was new and kind of had a cocky attitude, there would be at least one guy in that gym that would take it upon himself to rough him up a bit.
Give 'em
Whether
the
it's
old heart stretch.
yeah.
Let me just show you what I got here.
Yeah, you like that shoulder there? I gotta stretch it. Your shoulder's now behind your ass.
I love it how I hear people say that Stu Hart is probably the number one most impersonated person in wrestling history, and half of the people that do it don't even know didn't even meet Stu Hart in the
Nope.
wrestling business.
Yeah.
Nope. I met him through osmosis, through others that I met. They would just tell me stories about him, like the cat shit with the spatula.
What you do is
You take the spatula and you dip it in the cat shit.
Then you go back to frying the eggs.
do you still experience anybody that's deeply into kayfabe in any of your shows that like that's the way, like even a fan or a fellow wrestler where it's like that's the way that this needs to be constantly?
It's been a long time, but yeah, I'd probably say the last time I experienced something like that was probably in the mid 20 teens, like 2015, 2016 at the latest, maybe. But I'll never forget, we did this weekend. It was like at a bike fest, like a motorcycle fest. And we had a show that we would run every hour on the hour at this motorcycle fest. And there was this guy in a wheelchair who was at every single show. And he kind of talked like Stu Hart. He was grizzled, and he would yell at the wrestlers that would come out and dance and kind of be flamboyant. Now you fish hook them. You take your fucking tear your fucking mouth. You gouge their fucking eyes. And he was like, I couldn't tell if he thought it was like a work or if it was a state like performance, but I like every time he would like, if you like did something where you turned your back, no, you just don't turn your back on you. Turn around, he's gonna get you. Like I remember one of my buddies, he got like the finish was a surprise roll up, and then after the match, he was like, "Serves you right, fucking idiot, turn your back on him."
Now, Will, are you currently do you like being a good guy or a bad guy more? Which is because I always think being a bad guy would be way more fun. And being a good guy, though, I mean, especially the earlier years, you'd make more money. It's maybe a little harder to do.
I feel like the best way to do it is being a villain is so much easier and mentally freeing. I feel like you don't have that anxiety of going out there and everybody shitting on you, because that's what you're supposed to do. Like if you're a good guy and you don't feel confident, it's going to show right through. I think honestly, and we've seen it time and time again. I think, you have a good guy who goes out there and everybody poo-poos on him and they don't like him. And then he goes heel, he finds himself, he finds what works. Because you have a lot more time to find yourself as a heel, like what style works for you, because it's slower pace. You're in charge of the match. You can figure out how to lay out a match. And then once you've done that for so long, I feel it's easier for you to then transition back into a good guy. And then you can use some of that experience you used as a heel to help formulate a match. Then you have two minds that know how to kind of put that match together to better. Because as a heel, you can figure out, okay, if I do this, then this will get the good guy a good reaction with the crowd. So by doing that, I feel you learn that, and then you go back to being a good guy, and it's easier for you to figure out how to get those pops from the crowd, how to play on their sympathies. But I personally prefer being a heel. I think it's much more fun, much easier, and to kind of, especially as I'm getting older, like I'm in my late 30s now, it's a lot less stressful because it's not like, okay, you have to get up and go and you have to hit this move, this move, this move, this move, and like nice fluent. Like as a heel, you can kind of dictate the pace. You can slow it down if you need to. But I've always enjoyed being a villain more than being a hero.
Yeah. And also, I've always thought through the history of wrestling, some guys just kind of like just from their how they are, you can tell it's like he can't be anything but a heel. There's no way he can be anything else.
And
Like
oddly enough, like the best heels that I've met
are really nice.
are like they're the nicest guys, and then the best good guys, like the most predominant good guys, they're all kind of assholes, except for Honky Tonk Man. He's an asshole.
Oh man, you didn't want to take that shake rattle roll. So what happened?
No, he didn't. He didn't want to do it. He said it was too tricky. He said we ain't doing that back and forth thing. Just neck breaker. That's how people get hurt when you rock back and forth.
Oh man.
So the other part in the story is too that brought this all on. We mentioned Eddie Mansfield, and his whole thing was, from what I can understand, you as you go into wrestling, no matter what level you're at, you're an independent. What do they call it?
Contractor.
Yeah, contractor. So he was looking kind of like Ventura was to unionize to these promoters to say, here's health insurance, here's money for when you're not wrestling. Because pretty much, I mean, today, other than if you're probably big time, I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, Will, like even a lot of independent shows, if you're not working, you're not getting paid. And even if you're working, it depends on where you're on the card, you're not getting paid.
Nope.
So
yeah, even if you're working, you probably don't feel like you're getting paid.
Yeah. So I mean, that's how pretty much the wrestling business worked, I think, for a very, very long time, from what I understand. So he was like, I'm going to unionize this. But then his idea was for unionizing was, and he talks about this in the Dark Side of the Ring, was that's why he exposed the business. Because he figured if he exposed it, they could unionize it. Do you feel like
he also was trying to say he was getting revenge too for how a promoter had treated him?
Because there was one thing, I think, in somewhere in Mississippi, Alabama, somewhere in there, it was called the Plan B video, where like Bob Orton and a bunch of guys were gonna expose the business. I think if one of the foolers didn't pay up on back pay or something.
I mean, the business has had a history of promoters being pretty shady.
Yeah, and it
being or still being shady. Yes.
Well, I don't know the difference. I'm not into business. I'm just
from what
stuff I've heard,
things that I've heard, they're still shady. But do you feel like this was the way to go though? Like just be like, hey,
I understand where his mental headspace was, because like, I mean, there's a union for stuntmen.
Yeah.
You know, there's a union for actors. You know, so I see why he would think that would be the right way to go, because then you're viewed as more of a performative sport or performative art. But then like at the time there wasn't. Now correct me if I'm wrong. Was there the NFL Players Union at this time, or NHL Players Union? Okay.
Yeah, because I believe because 82 was their first strike.
Okay.
Then they had another strike in 87, which like tore down. And it was pretty much the biggest things were free agency with the NFL was because pretty much from the beginning of the time in pretty much any sport, you signed with that team, they owned your rights. So unless they traded you, they could just pay you whatever the hell they wanted.
Okay.
But then they started working on free agency because obviously if you're a free agent and you're really good, as you can see today in any sport, you're going to get paid.
Or even if you're mediocre and play for the Cowboys,
you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
So what year was it when Mansfield had his expose?
This was in December 28th of 1984.
Okay. So that
was a notorious encounter, but So
when does I mean it wasn't even that much long later that Ventura tried to unionize him as well, right? And then Hogan famously went behind his back and
yeah, Ventura tried to do it before WrestleMania 2.
yeah, so that wasn't that much longer after that. Only a couple years.
I think Ventura did it a little. Ventura was like, hey, more or less, I'm pretty sure everybody has done this at work where you're like, hey, what would they do if we all just walked out right now? What would they say? So that was pretty much Ventura's thing. Is wonder if we no showed WrestleMania 2. What would they do to us? Where Mansfield though was like, hey, obviously there's a bunch of different territories back then. And he was like, well, there was some in 87 too as well, but a lot more smaller territories. Mansfield just obviously was like, I'm going to go get revenge. Nobody wants to listen to me. Well, guess what? I'm going to show you that I'm the coolest guy on the block and I'm going to expose everything. That's where I think is the little bit of the difference where Ventura was still, I'm going to keep it in house and keep the wrestling tradition alive in a way of the whole of everything with kayfabe, where Eddie Mansfield was like, screw it. I just don't care. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to get revenge and then see if they change their minds afterwards. Because I think it was more revenge than it was to help anybody else. And think about how much money he probably made off of that, how much ABC paid him, considering the time period and everything else.
Yeah, I bet he got a paycheck, we might guess.
Yeah, because Stossel ended up suing Dr. D, and that was the funny thing about it too, is he had to go.
No, he didn't sue Dr. D. He sued WWF.
Yeah, he sued WWF, and he went to the WWF doctor, and the doctor told him straight up, he was like, I think you're just injured because you're holding on to it. Like you're just holding on to being injured. And he was like, no, I'm not. And he was like, yeah, once you get paid, I guarantee everything's going to go away. And Stossel admitted, once they settled, guess what happened? All of his pain went away.
I feel a little better today. Yeah.
And this really pissed me off because for years, I didn't really know about this. And for years, I watched 2020. This was the after TGIF news show. And I thought John Stossel was great. And then I watched this and I was like, I'm not that big of a fan of you anymore there, buddy.
I mean, before the 2000s, though, it seemed like every decade there was somebody who was trying to expose the business.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely remember in the 90s when I was a kid, there was because I remember the promos for it on television. Hey, upcoming, we're going to do a special on the secrets behind pro wrestling. Because they did that with the magic as well, like people who did magicians and stuff. They did 2 different ones, and I watched both of them. And I was like, I wish I didn't watch this. I would rather not know either one. Just enjoy the show.
I would have watched it just because I needed.
I did watch it.
You know, as much as I say I like to be worked, at a certain point, I want to know how I was being worked.
You want to know the secrets.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I'm not gonna dig for it, but if you're gonna throw it on my television, I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah. I'd also be curious to know, like, I'd have to do my due diligence to see when, because there was a point where Vince McMahon basically threw out kayfabe for insurance purposes.
That was like, I want to say that was in the 90s.
Was it the 90s? Okay.
Yeah,
I think it was during the steroid thing around in there.
Okay. Because I know he had to do that for certain states. The insurance would have been higher for a sporting event versus a performance. So he basically kind of let him in on the know so that he could get a cut with the insurance to make sure that he didn't have to pay as much. I believe like New York State's a big one there. So obviously them running the Garden as much as they did in the 80s. But I wouldn't be surprised if he did it before that.
All about saving that butt. You'll save that mighty dollar.
Oh, here we go. It's like a whole thing on exposing kayfabe. Yeah, I do know I think he did it during the steroid trial. I want to say, but yeah, he decommissioned a lot of stuff because you don't have to go through all that, do you? Like in New York State, like say you're about to go for a show, do you gotta, like I heard about a lot of guys had to go for like blood pressure work and get a.
Oh yeah, here in New York State, like they have to It's like one of the most expensive states to run a show in because you have to have a doctor on staff for the whole show. You have to have an ambulance there for the whole show with 2 EMTs. Every single wrestler has to have their blood pressure checked, their pulse taken, quick eval. And even if you're not wrestling, even if you're like a manager or a referee, you still have to go through that protocol.
Jeez.
Wow.
No wonder.
And then you have states like Kentucky where
you
have to have a license.
Oh, okay.
Each individual wrestler has to have their license. And you have to see a doctor regularly to keep that license.
I thought you just showed up in Kentucky.
No, Kentucky's actually one of the more stringent places. I'm sure there's other states where like, yeah, you can just show up and go.
Is that the only two states that you've ever wrestled in is Kentucky and New York, or?
No, I've done Pennsylvania. I've done a bunch up in Canada. Canada's kind of like there were times where we got turned away at the border because we're technically taking a job away from a Canadian citizen by going up there to wrestle. So we'd have to kind of play coy while we were going up there. When they'd go through our stuff, we'd just tell them we were going up for like a expo or an autograph signing or to do promo shots, stuff like that. Cause they'd always be like, why do you have boots and tights? And like, if you'd go with someone who was more notable, they would like pull up their page and see them wrestling and then be like, oh, I know who you are. You can't go in. And we'd have the same thing, vice versa. Like if Canadians would come down to the States, they would also have visa issues coming down because they're technically getting paid to work in America. But yeah, did that and a couple other states like down the East Coast.
North Carolina? Have you done North Carolina yet?
I did. Yes, I did. That was not pleasant. Sorry.
I kind of like North Carolina.
Man, I was hoping it was your favorite one.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Lived in Jacksonville for a couple of months. It wasn't too bad.
The one show I'll never forget, like we did the show and then the guy was a big believer in like everybody wrestles on the show and then the show ends with a big battle royal where everybody who was on the show is in the battle royal. And like I did my match and then I'm watching the rest of the show and he's like, hey, you good for the battle royal? I go, no, I'm good. And I remember vividly someone did a fucking what's it called when you do a front flip off the top rope, land on a guy's shoulders and give him a Hurricane Rana?
What?
Batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Someone did that in a battle royal. Like the ring is full of
Jim
people.
Cornette aneurysm.
Yeah. I used to remember the name of it because it was in No Mercy. It was one of the moves you could do.
Yeah.
And I remember like when you did Create a Wrestler, it was always there.
Like you do a front flip off of the top.
So you remember how Molly Holly used to do the Molly Go Round, where she would jump off the top rope, but instead of just like splashing them with her ass, like you would front flip, land on their shoulders, and then give them a Hurricane Rana.
What the hell is that?
I can't remember the name of it. I used to remember, but I remember like watching that. I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not in this battle royal because everybody's just doing moves. Nobody's looking out for each other.
The AEW special?
But I think it was like a 10 by 10 foot ring.
Jeez.
Oh man.
Let's read it up on this. Some other things, because this is kind of like the ultimate thing. I think this is the last big thing that WWF, WWE needs to do. If you're going to cleanse everything from the Vince era, is bring back or acknowledge good old Dr. D. But I guess in 1992, he was accused by the WWF of conspiracy with former referee Rita Chatterton for an extortion of $5 million from the company.
Well, Rita Chatterton is the one that sued Vince for rape.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
So maybe they won't because maybe they're saying that it was a collusion between the two of them to defraud or to discredit Vince. And then if they acknowledge him, they could be then, he raped Rita Chatterton back in the 80s.
Such a scumbag, Vince. Such a scumbag.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought back the king of conspiracies already. So maybe Dr. D's next.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, the former governor.
Yeah. Jesse the Brain Ventura or Jesse.
No, he was the body.
Jesse was the body. Bobby was the
didn't he
brain.
turn his name to the mind at one point, or the brain, or something?
No, he's done a lot of stuff, including a TV show that lasted one episode with Roddy Piper that we watched.
Yes. Were they? Have you watched that, Will? I don't want to get off.
I forgot about it. I completely forgot about it till just now.
We watched it for the Nostalgia Funhouse podcast,
Oh.
which you can find it on YouTube. And it's
Yeah.
this. They tried to make this show where it's Jesse and Roddy Piper, and they're a tag team wrestlers who get kicked out of the business because the promoter's girlfriend.
Yeah.
I can't exactly remember, but like she didn't want them there, and so they become cops.
Yeah. So think Police Academy.
Who do wrestling moves, which is my favorite part when they're fighting bad guys.
I'm gonna rewatch the show, and in my headcanon, it's going to be a pilot episode that led to the spinoff for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And Roddy Piper is the same person. He's just down on his luck.
There you go.
Picking off the force. And that's why he's doing these odd jobs for the Sunny Gang.
Wait until you see because it's called tag team, the ridiculous amounts of like hot tags.
Yeah. They're just a real fight. There's a real fight and they have a hot tag.
Because they're tag team back then.
Yeah.
It was like what I can't remember which one. One was being choked out. Legit being choked out by a bad guy.
So he tagged them.
Are the fight scenes half as good as the one in They Live?
No, that's a Stone Cold classic fight scene.
Yeah. But I hope they go on for as long. I hope it's a one episode for half an hour and 10 minutes of it is one continual fight scene.
I love it how they bury Eddie Mansfield too so hard about this, saying that
he's hated. Yeah.
He's hated. Yeah. And they were like, he never did anything. And I'm looking at this, I don't know what is it? Online World of Wrestling. Looking at his career history, it looks like he was kind of enhancement to the stars. But
but those guys are important.
He retained I'm sorry, Dustin. I didn't mean like that. But he did win a television title in Florida.
Was he ever on television though?
I don't know.
He was not a name that I knew. I will say that.
You did know of him before this? Or?
Did not know.
Probably because they buried him so badly after all this. His last match on here was 1983.
That's a good year.
Yeah, so I think it checks out that because you said he felt he was doing it as revenge as well. I could see that. Just bitter.
Yeah, his last tag team match was pretty good.
Now, Will, I bet you've never encountered any bitter guys in wrestling in your career.
They're always so happy and jovial.
They're not throwing beer cans at you.
No, never.
Hey,
never ever.
Eddie Mansfield defeated Bruno Sammartino
Jr.
Yeah, damn it. You took it away from me.
I fucking knew that right away.
Damn it. How dare you take that away from me? He was the tag team partner with J.J. Dillon.
Oh, wow. That'll be must-see television.
Is it J.J. Dillon spelled with a Y? Just the knockoff version.
Yeah, D-Y-L.
What was the one that got me too? I was looking and he was like looking up at the lights against all these guys. Hector Guerrero. And the one that got me where I was like, oh, look, he finally won this. And it would be great. Okay. In NWA Hollywood, Eddie Mansfield defeated Mr. Enhancement Talent himself back in the 80s of WWF. He has legitimately 2 LJN figures that are variants. He lost to King Kong Bundy in 8 seconds in WrestleMania 1. Do you know who this man is?
Not Horowitz, is it?
No.
It's the King Kong Bundy. WrestleMania 1?
Yeah. He's got such a think of UPS or FedEx. What do you think of this guy? Because that's what I do the minute I hear his name. This was like his
SD Jones. That's right.
He is Special Delivery Jones.
Hey, one of my favorite wrestlers ever was Jake Manning, the Man Scout, and he famously has lost to a lot of people to the point where he put out a DVD that's just like his best of DVD, and he made sure every one of them was a match that he was losing to like big stars. so, so I was like, "This is brilliant."
He's got a great podcast. He's got a great wrestling mind as well too.
Yeah, he does, and immaculate mustache too. I gotta say.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to be a dad, you have to.
Yeah.
10 Bell Pod, man. That's great. Great podcast. But to wrap things up.
Yeah, just a couple of quick fire questions for our pro wrestler here. Favorite opponent ever?
Yeah.
Woo.
You can name a couple, so if you want.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, a lot of it was like the local guys that were around here. Like I loved wrestling this one guy named Johnny Puma because we were really close friends and we would just beat the shit out of each other.
Wasn't that one of the Public Enemy guys?
No, that's Johnny Grunge.
Okay.
But probably my favorite, more well known was I got to wrestle Chris Canyon, and that was an awesome match, and it was a really great experience.
Man, is that probably your favorite match you think that you've ever had?
It's in the top 5 for sure.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is there anybody better than Canyon?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, he did kick me in the nose really good.
You gotta put that hand up, man.
I didn't put that hand up. I took it hard way.
All right, who's somebody that you hated?
Oh God,
you can be vague about it if you want.
Yeah. Just tell us when we're off air.
Jeez.
Or tell us about the experience of why you didn't like it.
Probably like. I never said I would probably hate someone, but I've matured. So even if I did hate them at the time, like now I don't hate them. I just I understand why they were the way they were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Brutus Beefcake has got to be up there just because I got lucky. He showed up late and he just tried to get hammered before a match, but he didn't have enough time. And then the next time I saw him, he did have enough time. Luckily I wasn't wrestling him and he did get drunk for that match. So that was just unpleasant.
Yeah.
And then like even after I wrestled him, he forgot who I was.
Oh.
All right, what's the wildest experience you ever had because of pro wrestling? Or strangest, I think that's where I'm leading here.
Gosh. Probably there's too many to tell and too many that I've forgotten.
Damn.
Headshots, man. Headshots.
Had concussions. They're crazy. They'll get you. Honestly, like just even after the shows, like you'd go probably the biker show. That was kind of a crazy experience because we were wrestling every hour and there was just bikers everywhere and we were just having a good time and just experiencing all those kind of people. But another one that stands out is like, I remember once we after a show up in Canada, we went out and we were having some beverages and we linked up with this group of girls that wanted to party with us. So we thought we were going to go back to their hotel and party. So we did. And then as we were there, we quickly realized that they were just using us for a ride home because their boyfriends left them in Canada. And we quickly realized that when we were trying to make advances and the girls were like, "Oh, no, you can't drink. You have to drive us home." So we found their mace and we just started spraying it all over the hotel room. So everybody started coughing, but we didn't tell them why everybody was coughing. And then as they went to go, they were going to check out. So when they went to go check out, I remember I sprayed my friend in the face with the mace and it hit him in the forehead and then it dripped into his eye so he couldn't see. So we then ran away from them after they checked out so that they had nowhere to go. They didn't have a room for the night. They didn't have a ride home. And we were running away from them, jumping over fences, just to get away from them and leave them stranded. And my one friend was blind with mace, so we were trying to like
that you blinded.
Well, we shouldn't have moved.
He should have put that hand up.
Exactly. Same advice. So that's one of the many crazy stories.
Who
Yeah.
Yeah, we also have some very fun ones off mic, but yeah.
Who
Yeah.
is your favorite wrestler of all time?
It's kind of a double-edged sword because it's Chris Benoit, so it's
Okay.
Yeah.
it's like,
We did a whole episode on can you separate the art from the artist? So we
and
could
I
fix it.
I have to do that with everybody that I liked because they're all piece of shit scumbags.
Yeah,
in some way, shape, or
I'm
form.
learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning that too. I got asked at work my top 5 favorite wrestlers, and the majority of them were giant scumbags or had some sort of definite drug problem there.
Yeah, but yeah, it's kind of bittersweet because I'd say Benoit, and then a close second would be Eddie Guerrero. So
Yeah.
Is there a match or something that was like damn, this is what I want to do that got you into wrestling or a wrestler in a way?
The Rock was actually one of the first ones to pull me in. And then probably the first match I saw that like totally like blew my socks off was the I Quit match at Royal Rumble 1999. Like that Rock Mankind match was just bananas.
Yeah.
And then with the Beyond the Mat stuff and like looking into it, it was just like that perfect storm of like physicality, but being over the top and being like, holy, like seeing the backstage stuff. And then it just opened up my curiosity and like the rabbit hole. But like the one match that I'll watch all the time just as like motivation is again Royal Rumble, but the 2003, I believe it was 2003 Rumble between Angle and Benoit. And that being on the same show with like Triple H and Steiner, it just showed how great they really were. Like it juxtaposition. Like it's a great match on its own, but like with the Triple H Steiner match, I believe that was before it. And then it followed by that match. It's like, wow. It's like these guys are just fucking amazing.
Big Papa Pump with his drop foot at that point.
Yeah, poor Scotty.
Yeah, he's trying to do too many math problems.
There's another guy that was banned by the WWF for years.
He's
Another
back.
guy who used to own a Shoney's.
He sure did.
He famously owned a Shoney's in Georgia.
I don't know his brother's on the Board of Education Council in Michigan. Rick is?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Is he still
he was.
after that debacle?
He was at one point. I don't know if he still is.
Could you imagine walking in and be like, I want to talk to one of the guys in charge, and there's the dog face gremlin right
What a nickname.
You know, he just barks orders at everybody.
I remember his character in WCW NWO Revenge when one of his taunts is he would get on all fours and go lift his leg like he's peeing on you.
So good.
Yeah. That's when they made real video games.
He ran unopposed in November of 2006 and won.
Well, who's going to go up against him?
Exactly.
One of the head shrinkers.
The Sheik is going to come out of nowhere. It's in Michigan. Sheik or Sabu or.
Oh man.
That's got to be the best match on Mania 9, right? It's like the only good match.
What's that one?
The Steiners versus the head shrinkers.
Oh, it's after trying to watch that.
Like that and maybe Michaels Tatanka.
Yeah.
I have a very strong opinion that most WrestleManias, while very fun events, in the big scheme of things, don't normally have the best matches on there.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I mean, every once in a while you get a banger. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, there's been some good matches on there, but it's way more about the moments for WrestleMania than anything else.
Same thing with the Super Bowl. There's a lot of crappy Super Bowls.
Yeah, that's true.
Regular season or playoff games that were better. But that is it for good old. I'm just looking at his Wikipedia picture and he's scaring the shit out of me. That is it for Dr. D, David Schultz.
Bring him back. Bring him home.
Yeah, bring him home. Hashtag free Dr. D.
I would like if he made a medicated foot powder.
Yeah, he's got to do something about that with the feet and the shoes.
You know.
I don't think I want to talk to him. Have you? There's another funny story about him.
Could you imagine if he was the Dr. Schultz? That's the Dr. Schultz and all that foot stuff.
Yeah,
You go in to have your foot looked at, and it's that guy.
He
Imagine a commercial with Dr. D
Yeah.
promoting his foot powder, but the podiatrist in the commercial is Tony Atlas.
Oh
What
man,
was the other crazy
I'm getting that
thing
foot powder.
that I heard about Dr. D is that I was listening to the Dark Side of the Ring podcast, and they were talking about just going to see Dr. D, and it was like very impossible to set up a meeting with him, and it because he lives like in a remote part of Tennessee that nobody knows where he lives, because I guess I don't know if he's paranoid or something like that, but he says he doesn't want anybody to know where he lives under certain reasons. And when they got there, they were told that they wouldn't be allowed to film inside of his house. And the only reason why they got to go inside of the house to film him is because it was like some hot, humid Tennessee day. And then they was able to go in then. But he's
I thought he was pretty well spoken in that Dark Side.
I mean,
thought
he was
carried
literally-
himself well.
And he was actually just taking them everywhere, showing them all his stuff. So I don't know what's his problem.
yeah, but you don't know.
He forgot he was paranoid.
Yeah, you don't know where but you don't know where he
He
lives.
showed him his giant stun gun.
Well, that's probably why he did it. He was like, "I'm going to take you around, but hey,
Yeah.
I got
He
weapons
did make sure-
everywhere."
His giant shotgun that's a stun gun.
He was like, "I got weapons everywhere." I like his picture of Hulk Hogan just at a house.
Yeah, forgot his name. Yeah,
Yep, old friend, but I forgot his name.
because Hulk Hogan is quick to throw you under the bus. That's another thing I learned from his story.
Yeah,
We can do a whole podcast, but it'd have to be like 4 hours long of all the stuff that Hogan said.
I want to do another wrestling one for this, where we just go back and we look at all the history lies WWE, WWF has told us over the years.
I think we're going to cover some more in a couple of weeks. Thank you, Netflix.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, big shout out to Will for joining us today.
yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Will, where can they find you wrestling?
At Empire State Wrestling, which is in Western New York, Buffalo area. It's predominantly where I'm currently in the middle of a comeback. And that's you check out ESW Wrestling, Empire State Wrestling. Make sure it's not the collegiate that's oftentimes misinterpreted, because that's also a thing. But yeah, check those kids out. They're good wrestlers, getting on the mat, rolling around, tumbling, what have you.
South Park episode. That's all I
Yeah.
can picture right now. Man.
Yeah, the South Park Wrestling episode is one of my favorites.
Yes, those kids are trying to take her jobs.
But with that being said, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.